Hi and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave and this is episode 613 and today's date is March 11th, 2015 and the title of this episode is U.S. is now broke and it is in worse fiscal shape than Greece. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we've been talking about Greece and the Eurogroup and we've been talking about what is the new government going to do. Are they going to go along with the Eurogroup? Or are they going to make an exit from the Eurozone? And are they going to go with Russia or China? And we knew something was in the works because they have a drachma already. And it looks like they've come out swinging. We mentioned this back in episode 587. The title of that report was U.S. government central bankers talk peace in Ukraine, but their message is war. This was on February 9th, 2015, when we talked about Greece wanting Germany to pay for World War II. Because back then, what happened was the Nazis actually forced Greece to loan them money, and they want it repaid. And Greece is saying, listen, if you do not pay us the $12 billion, because over time with the interest, it is racked up to be about $12 billion. We are going to seize German property. And of course, Germany is out there saying, absolutely not. We've already paid that. And of course, they're bringing up the time back in the 50s when they paid $25 million, which is equivalent to about $220 million today. And they also paid out $115 million, which is about $230 million today, to victims of Nazi crimes in the early 60s. And Athens is out there saying that no, that money was the initial payment. And they want the rest of it. Where is it? And if you don't, we're going to have the court system in Greece rule that we can go after your properties if you do not make payments. So they're countering right now, and they're fighting against the debt that they owe to the Eurogroup, because they want to use that money to pay for it. We're going to have to watch this to see how this turns out, and this is definitely it's going to turn into a huge fight. We see out in England the jobless, young ethnic minorities, their unemployment rates are soaring. The number of ethnic minority youth unemployed for over a year has increased by 50%. They're having a very tough time. They're saying the cost of living has increased, and many communities there are struggling. We're seeing the same thing here in the U.S., and actually many of the countries throughout Europe are seeing the same exact thing. More and more people are getting laid off. It's harder to find good paying jobs, and the cost of living continually goes up. Even though they tell us, no, it's not going up. Everything is fine. We're in a deflationary period. But every time I go to the market, food continually goes up. Even with the suppression of gas prices, I would expect the price of food would come way down. Because when we had that jolt of gas prices going up, I saw food prices go up. But it seems that they're not bringing the food prices down. It seems that they're keeping them steady. They came down a little bit, but now they're steady, and we're going to see them go right back up. Because the value of the dollar is decreasing, and it's getting harder and harder for everyone to survive. We see more and more companies here in the U.S., they are laying off people. Ericsson, 2,200 people. Amgen, 300. Viacom, they are getting ready to announce layoffs. They're doing a complete restructuring. And we see many, many companies have been laying off. And again, where are they going to find work? Where are they going to find the same jobs with the same pay? It is very difficult out there. Many people have been writing in saying, listen, I have a job right now, and I've been putting out a resume, and it is very difficult to find that job, especially at the same pay. A lot of the jobs and anything that's coming back, it's for lower pay. And the question is, why would I switch? So I'm going to stay on the job that I have right now. And this is what's happening. People are getting laid off and they can't find that same job because they're finding the same job, maybe, at lower pay. And it's getting more and more difficult, and some people can't even find that job. So they take a part-time job temporarily. We see in the real estate market, things are not going well. I looked around once again. I see houses still on the market. They can't move them. On the market for 120, 150 days. Prices are coming down still. We see mortgage applications decrease by 1.3% from 1 week earlier. This is according to the Mortgage Bank Association for March 6th. Refinancing decreased by 3%. This is the lowest level since January of 2015. We see that the real estate industry right now is imploding. It's not getting better. And right now, a watchdog group is looking at Fannie Mae. You know, the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, where the U.S. taxpayer bailed them out because of what happened during the 2007, 2008, 2009 recession. Nearly 7 years after it was bailed out from the housing market crash, the mortgage giant Fannie Mae is still engaging in behavior that could precipitate future financial crisis and taxpayer losses. This is coming from a government watchdog, which they're going to reveal in a report today. The Federal Housing Finance Agency Inspector General said its latest concerns involve Fannie Mae haphazard decision to fill a critical auditor position with an employee who lacked proper qualifications and suffered from a conflict of interest. Again, we're doing the same thing we did back in 2007, 2008, going into the last crisis. Nothing has changed. They started up the adjustable rate mortgages. They have subprime people coming into the real estate industry. We see now that Fannie and Freddie have a new program where you only have to put 3% down, and if you have a heartbeat, we'll give you a mortgage. Actually, a lot of the banks are doing even better than that. They're giving you 100% financing, and they're paying for your closing costs. They're doing the same exact thing that they did before. They're trying to drag everyone in. They need everyone all in, so when the system comes down, they can take all of these resources. And this is exactly what they're doing. We see the factory output is decreasing. Retail sales decreasing. And we see the Baltic Dry Index, it topped out at 568, and it's decreased by 3 points now to 565. This is the raw material that factories use to produce items. And again, if people aren't out there buying, the factories don't need to produce anything. If they don't need to produce, why do they need the raw materials? And we're seeing that this is exactly what is going on. The economy is falling apart. The entire system cannot be maintained. It's impossible. We look at the Eurozone and we see those countries that are continually taking on debt, it's just getting worse and worse. Right now, we see the U.S. has a $210 trillion fiscal gap. And may well be, it's actually, right now, the fiscal shape of this country is worse than Greece. This is coming from a Boston University economist, Laurence Kotlikoff. He was talking in front of the Senate Budget Committee. The first point I want to get across, he said, is that our nation is broke right now. Our nation's broke, and it's not broke in 75 years or 50 years or 25 years or 10 years. It's broke today. Federal debt in the hands of the public is only 74% of GDP. Using the Congressional Budget Office July 2014 75-year alternate fiscal scenario projection, Kotlikoff calculated that the U.S. fiscal gap, which he defines as the difference between our government's projected financial obligations and the present value of all projected future tax and other receipts, is actually much higher than those of either Italy or Greece. We have a 210 trillion fiscal gap at this point, he said, which amounts to 211% debt to GDP ratio. The fiscal gap is 16 times larger than the official U.S. debt, which indicates precisely how useless official debt is for understanding our nation's true fiscal position, he said. Stated differently, the overall federal government is 58% under-financed. Social Security is 33% under-financed. To eliminate the fiscal gap now, you know what the government has to do? It would have to increase federal taxes by 58.5%. 58.5%. What does this tell us? It tells us that this economy cannot survive, because if we wait longer and longer and longer, that 58.5% goes up to 77% increase. Do you really think the people in the country have the ability to pay higher taxes at this point? Where are they going to get the revenue to pay for all of this? They've already implemented draconian laws like FATCA, Obamacare. They're trying climate change to push a carbon tax on people. They're doing whatever they possibly can to bring in revenue. But guess what? There's none out there. And once they exhaust all of this and they can't find any more revenue and they continually add to the debt, guess what happens? They get desperate. They realize no matter how much they borrow and how much the central bank prints, they can't keep up. It doesn't work. And once they become desperate, this is when they push the event. This is when they say, okay, we need something to get into this war, to blame it on someone else. And we can see we are heading in that direction, and it is getting closer and closer. And sooner or later, we will see this happen. Because as we can see, from what's going on around the world and inside the U.S., Canada, Australia, things are just getting worse, not better. They can tell us it's getting better, but when we continually look at all of this, we can see it is not. Now, as we know, the United States has a plunge protection team and a high-frequency trading team, and they keep the market up. If they see it dropping down, they step in, they purchase stocks to keep the market going, to make sure it doesn't come down. And if things get really, really bad, they have kill switches in place. So just in case there is some type of an event like a cyber attack where they have to show that another country or a group brought down the economy, they have the kill switches in place to stop the market from dropping. And they have this on the NASDAQ, on the stock exchange, and the BATS system. And we can see that Japan has the same exact thing. And Japan basically stepped in a stunning 143 times to buy stocks to prevent the market from dropping. And we can see the Bank of Japan has been buying Japanese stocks on 76% of the days when the market opened lower. During the past 2 years, the central bank entered the stock market roughly once every 3 days, picking up a total of about 23 billion of ETFs that track Japan's major stock indexes. And you can see that all these countries needed to put this in place because of the way the economies are. The stock market is not a representation of what is going on with companies, with the economy. It is a manipulated area where the central bankers are trying to show us with their illusion that everything is fine. And this is why they have all of this in place. The entire thing is an illusion, and the stock market is the last indication that everything has fallen apart. Everything has been falling apart previous to this because we're looking at the real economic indicators and not the illusionary numbers they're giving us, and we see that, yeah, this is not better, and it's not going as well as they're telling us. But they want all eyes on the market, and when that comes down, then they'll say, oh, look, yeah, the economy has broken. It's fallen apart. We're in a collapse. But they want the market to come down when they can blame it on another group or country. And this is why they're manipulating it so hard every day to keep it where it is. We see that OPEC right now is going to keep the production of oil at 30 million barrels a day. And their next meeting is not until June 5th. So right now, it makes complete sense. The demand is very low, so they're going to increase production to bring down oil prices. No, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. They're doing this on purpose in the instructions of the central bankers to put pressure on Russia. They're placing sanctions on Russia. They're keeping the oil prices down to put pressure on Russia and other countries like Venezuela, Brazil, Argentina, you name it. They're trying to foster regime change in these countries so the people rise up and say, we can't take it anymore. The economies are falling apart. They also tried to use the suppression of oil to spur economic growth here in the United States, but actually it had the opposite effect. People didn't go out and spend their money. We see HSBC is allegedly closing all 7 of its London gold vaults. Why would they do this? Well, there's some rumors out there saying that all the GLD contracts that they have out there, they don't have enough gold in these vaults to cover it. So they want to get out of the business right now because there's not enough in there. And we can see right now, they're not saying that they're vaults. They're safety deposit box, so don't worry about it. And of course, we understand that HSBC is under the watchful eye of everyone because they've been laundering money for the wealthy to get out of taxes. They've also been laundering money for drug cartels. So they're being looked at by many different angles here, and we can see they're in the mode of protecting themselves because they realize the entire system is collapsing and they're getting into hot water. Now, something very interesting. The United States government, the central bankers, have been putting a lot of pressure on Russia with sanctions, with oil suppression. And Russia and China decide, you know what? We need to step away from the private Western central bank countries. We need to start our own payment system. And we know that Russia's went live, and we see China's is coming live by September. It's all ready to go. They're testing it right now, and they're going to go live later in this year. And we see the U.S. government would love to kick out Russia from the SWIFT system. But again, things don't go as planned as the central bankers would like. They don't always go the way they want it. Things sometimes backfire. And the U.S. government has been doing everything it can to torpedo the Russian economy. And we can see that the thing they want to do is they want to push them out of the SWIFT system. But there's a problem. There would be a boomerang effect on Europe and the United States and many other nations. But SWIFT decided to do the opposite. They decided to basically give them a seat on the board. Now, there are about 25 available board seats, and each seat is allocated for a 3-year term to a specific country. The United States, Belgium, France, Germany, UK, Switzerland, each hold 2 seats. A handful of other countries, they have about 1 seat. And of course, most countries don't hold any seats at all. Well, Monday, they looked at Russia. They looked at, they're going to remove themselves from the SWIFT system. The SWIFT is going to lose a lot of money. So basically what they did, the opposite of what the U.S. government wants, they gave them a seat on the board. And we can see right now the central bankers must be very angry at this. They're trying to stop Russia from using their own payment system. Do I think it's going to stop them? Most likely not. I think Russia and China are going to move forward with their payment systems, and they're going to slowly remove themselves from the SWIFT system because it's in their interest right now because they started the BRICS system. The BRICS system has been ratified by Russia, by China. They're funding the bank to rival the IMF. And we can see sooner or later, they won't need anything in the private Western central bank world. they'll have everything that they need, that they created. And they're separating themselves because they know eventually the central bankers will not just sit by and say, okay, that's fine with us. No, they're going to go to war for this. Because they want to own everything. Putin is taking it a step further. Because of all the sanctions and everything that's going on, they might create a Eurasian economic currency for the Eurasian Union, for the trade bloc. The move comes as relations between union members, Russia, Belarus, Armenia, Kazakhstan, are strained by all these sanctions, by the suppression of oil, and everything that's going on with the private Western central bank countries. And they're saying it might be in their best interest, because the way the currencies are right now, to have a Eurasian single currency. And right now, Putin is pushing forward with this model. Do I think it's a good choice right now? Most likely not, because we see how the Eurozone is doing, and they have a single currency, but we'll have to see how this goes. I think it's better to have different currencies in different countries, diversified, instead of having the central banks control one specific currency. This is what the central banks have been trying to do. They want a one world government with one currency to control everything. Now, we understand that President Obama created this memorandum to have the illegals come over the border, and once they're over the border, they have amnesty. Anyone that reports back to the executive branch, all the agency, DHS, TSA, they cannot deport these people. And the judge who blocked the president executive action or the memorandum on immigration has ordered the Justice Department to answer allegations the government misled him about part of the plan. U.S. District Judge Andrew Hanen has ordered the federal government lawyers to appear in his court on March 19th. The hearing is in response to a filing last week in which the government acknowledged some deportation reprieves were granted before Hanen's February 16th injunction. And he wants them to explain why this is. And we know all of this is not for the betterment of the people here in the United States. Actually, if they're just going to let people in, why have the borders? Why have the checks? They're just coming in, and they're letting people into the country. There's no reason for it then, is there? It makes no sense, but we know they're using it to have these illegals, because as soon as they come over, they get work permits, and what do? They go find jobs in the corporations. And the corporations are not hit with the Obamacare penalty of $3,000 for each employee. These illegals also get benefits from the government. They are able to go out and get student loans to join the armed forces, to get auto loans to continually push the bubble up further and further and further out, because they need to keep the system going, and they're doing whatever they possibly can to keep it going until they can start that event. And we can see this is exactly what this is all about. Now, we understand that the United States government central bankers, they're trying to have regime change in many different countries. Argentina, Venezuela, we had one in Ukraine, in the Middle East, and they're continually doing this. And history shows that when the U.S. denounces a country, it is often a pretext for intervention and regime change. And we see already with Venezuela, the president said Venezuela is a national security threat. And again, we see that I wouldn't be surprised if Obama authorizes a secret operation, of course using the CIA, or some other intelligence service, to help push regime change in Venezuela. They tried many different times, but I'm talking about a big instance inside Venezuela. I wouldn't be surprised if they target an embassy in Caracas, or begin some other deceitful operation against maybe innocent civilians, to create panic and justify a response in restoring human rights, democracy, and public liberties. And this is why we need to remove the president of Venezuela. and put in our own puppet government because we want that oil. I mean, we saw this done many other times. We saw that it was done in Italy, the murder of Aldo Moro in 1978, or the bomb in Bologna train station in 1980. And it was discovered that CIA was behind all of that. We saw it happen in Ukraine. We saw it happen in, Iraq, Lebanon, Libya, Yemen. It's happening in Sudan, Thailand. You name it, it happened. And it was all from the U.S. government central bankers. And I wouldn't be surprised, maybe not tomorrow, a couple days or weeks from now, something might happen in Venezuela, something big, where they can say, this is the reason, and have the people come out and say, we want the president out there. We want him removed. And I wouldn't be surprised. We see in France, we had that false flag terrorist attack that put troops on the street. We saw it happen in Canada. We saw it happen in Australia, in France, in Belgium. And the 10,000 troops on the streets of France, they're not being removed. It looks like they're permanent now. Why is this? Is it really because of the terrorists? Come on. They know these were false flags. All the evidence points to it. No, they know what's coming down the line. They know the economies are failing. They need to put the troops in place to maintain control. This is why we saw all these draconian laws, removing a lot and actually hindering a lot of the people's rights. Of course, they were out there marching that they're all for freedom and freedom of the press, but they were doing the opposite. Taking control of the internet. Taking control of the journalists. And of course, most of those people that were marching in that parade, they didn't have freedom of speech in their country, like in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and many other countries, Turkey. Actually, in Turkey, what happened there? They were setting up a false flag event where the Turkish president, Erdogan, had their forces sneak into Syria with a missile launcher, and they wanted them to fire the missile back into their country, and they wanted to go to war so NATO could be involved. But it got out on YouTube from a secret recording, and he tried to ban YouTube, tried to ban Twitter to cover it all up, but it still got out there. We see out in Ukraine that Russia would give Ukraine better terms provided that Kiev pays for its debt. They owe a lot of money. $2.4 billion and $200 million in penalties. And pretty soon their winter package of all this discounts is coming to an end March 31st. And their prices are going to go up. Moscow right now is very disappointed in Switzerland, and it makes no sense in what they're doing. They decided to expand their sanctions against Russia. Russia is implementing a peace deal, trying to calm the situation down. And we see they're imposing more sanctions or extending it. We see the U.S. is out there placing more sanctions on Ukraine and Russia. Does this make any sense? Is this a way to foster peace and to get the country behind the peace deal? No, they're not behind the peace deal. They wanted Russia to stop whatever they were doing, which they have no proof of. No satellite imagery, no photography. We have to remember the U.S. and the Czech Republic, they're flying over the border of Russia with Ukraine in the Open Sky Treaty this week. They're taking high-definition pictures. They've done it 4 times before in this year. Guess what they found? Absolutely nothing. The U.S. has satellites right over and above where everything is going on. And every time they come out with a statement, they give us these 1970 satellite images, black and white, and they're blurry. I can get better images on Google Earth. And you're telling me these multi-million-dollar satellites, that's all they can give us? Well, we know that's fake. We know that Digital Globe, they can give us crisp, clear, high-definition, in-color 3D images of what is really going on. They can zoom in so close, you can read the writing on tanks or cars. So what they're giving us is propaganda. Germans, they're saying, you know something, we don't want to bail out Ukraine because guess what? We have to pay for their bailout. It goes back to the EU taxpayers. And I think we don't want to bail them out. But don't worry, the IMF is out there and they're giving them $17.5 billion for a bailout to help Ukraine. IMF Lagarde says Ukraine has moved toward talks with holders of its public sector debt with a view to improve medium-term sustainability. Lagarde says Ukraine program ambitious, involves risk, says there's a reasonable strong prospect of success. Really? Lagarde says Ukraine officials show strong commitment to reform. Basically, the central bankers are saying, we're going to loot the country even more. Here's some more money. Go get us the southeastern section. And once you're done with that, get us Crimea. The U.S. is sending in more drones, Humvees. Of course, it's all non-lethal. And this is very misleading because when they bring in these Humvees, the drones, all they need to do is get the weapons to attach on top of it. And they don't have to go through the U.S. to get these weapons. They can take the money that they're loaned and go out to different areas and buy the pieces they need. It's very easy. So they're getting these Saxon vehicles, just attach a weapon on top. They're getting the Humvees to just attach a weapon on top. Getting the drones that just attach a weapons to it. It's very simple, and of course, they're getting these weapons through black market, covert operations, and they're actually coming from the U.S. And we can see the aid package includes a small Raven drone system, which can be launched by hand, radios, counter-mortar radars, 30 heavily armored Humvees, and 200 regular ones. And of course, Ukraine is spending all of their money on this instead of it going to the people. And Kiev, they're not ready to start political talks. We see they're pulling back their heavy military, but they're not pulling it back that far. And once everything is pulled back, they're supposed to have talks, but they're stalling once again. And it seems that they really don't want to have talks. Poland is out there, and they're preparing a hybrid war. Through shady diplomacy, they're having an arms buildup right now. The head of Poland's army told the national television channel that Poland is ready to tackle a military crisis through unclear diplomatic intentions and signals on its borders. Russia, they see, has not increased its military presence in the Kaliningrad region, which borders Poland, but Poland believes that they need to add more military assets in this area just in case, even though they see no sign of anything going on. We have the 6 NATO warships now taking part in the Black Sea in their naval drills. We see countries out there, Canada, Germany, Italy, the US, Bulgaria, Romania, Turkey. They're having the drills in NATO, flexing their muscles. Russia's doing the same thing. We see this occurring quite often. We see that Russia right now is completely ending its activities under the conventional armed forces in Europe. Because the original CFE treaty signed in 1990 by 16 NATO nations and 6 Warsaw Pact set equal ceilings for each bloc on key categories of conventional armaments with tanks, combat armored vehicles, artillery, and Russia sees that Europe is not abiding by this. NATO is not abiding by this. So why should they be a part of this? So they're ending it right now. Right now we see John Kerry pushing for the authorization for war. Right now it's in limbo. It's not going anywhere. And we see Kerry out there saying we need to vote on the authorization for war. And let me just say, if they don't do this, they will create an event to make it happen. It might not be here in the United States. It could be. We might see it in Iraq. We might see it in Lebanon. We might see it in Libya. We might even see it here to push Congress into voting for it. This is what happens. They present it. They let it sit there. If nothing happens, they use an event to push it through. They make something happen to convince everyone that we need to go after the Islamic State. We see something very interesting right now. Glacier Technology Solutions. The military contractors working directly with the U.S. Marine Corps, they're assisting them with their simulation training programs, and they are looking for role players of Ukrainian and Russian ethnicity and language skills, men ranging 18 to 65. And they're welcome to apply for what is described as a temporary part-time on-call work based on need and availability. The scheduled hours will vary from 8 to 12 hours per working day and $19 per hour. The question is, what is this for? And why are they doing it? We see this happen quite a bit, where the DHS looks for people, for actors, and then they use them in a real event. What does this technology company need them to do? Do they need them to help add things in there to make it look like it's coming from Russia, like some type of cyber attack? Very interesting. And we need to keep an eye on all of this because we don't know what this is going to be used for later down the road. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.